Ooh, breathe it in. Can you taste that? It's spoiler season, ladies and gentlemen. Tarkir Dragonstorm is here. Or rather, not quite yet. Actually, Tarkir Dragonstorm is here tomorrow. But that doesn't stop us from getting a couple new cards today. So, in light of it being day 0, I thought I would get ahead of the game and cover the cards that were leaked earlier today, as well as review all the cards that have been revealed so far. With today's leaks, we actually have all 5 of the clan leaders for each of the 5 wedges for Tarkir, starting with Zergo Thunder's Decree. This is the new Mardu leader. Quite an exciting commander. It's a 3-mana 2/4 with a new keyword called Mobilize. When it attacks, it will make 2 1/1 warriors that will die at the end of turn. But here's the thing with Zer? Not Zer the Enchanter. But the thing with Zergo is that when he attacks and creates these tokens, if Zergo is around, they will not be sacrificed at the end of the turn. This makes for a pretty exciting commander in my mind. Rather than being a cookie cutter kind of Mardu sacrifice commander, we instead get a commander that encourages you to build around cards that clone tokens that then get sacrificed at the end of the turn. So think of stuff like Molten Duplication and Flare of Duplication. If you target a warrior with these and make a token copy with Zergo on the battlefield, you actually will get to keep the copy because this clause says next end step rather than every end step. Zergo's on the battlefield, you'll get to keep the token. In standard, I think this card's cheap mana cost and 4 health is particularly relevant. This was probably one of the most meaningful stats you can have on a card in standard. That is 4 health for 3 mana. One thing that does hold it back though is effectively the fact it needs to attack. That doesn't necessarily mean it won't see play. We do have a lot of good warriors actually in standard at the moment, including Emberheart Challenger, which is in its colors. I also imagine there'll be a bunch of new warriors in Tarkir Dragonstorm that this could slot right in with. But I do like the idea of cloning Emberheart Challenger with Molten Duplication, which is in the format, getting the Valiant trigger, and then getting 2 hasty creatures. Do you think there's potential in that? So it could also potentially pop up in some sort of Mardu Convoke list as well. This is sort of a token deck that wants to play lots of little creatures, tap them to cast a really big Convoke creature like Knight Errant of Eos. Again, hard to see that one working considering the tokens that it makes. While it making 3 tokens for 3 mana is great value, it will struggle given the fact it needs to attack. I think there's better ways to do that right now. I think Zergo will be a great commander and will pop up in a new deck if he does in standard. Up next, we have the leader of the Abzan in Felithar, Dawn of the Abzan. Abzan continues its long tradition of kind of being a very generic 3-color combination. This one cares about creatures dying and +1/+1 counters. Having said that, despite its simplicity, I do think this card has a pretty relevant place. Pretty unremarkable looking, but I do think any token deck that happens to be an Abzan will absolutely want this card as a 3-mana creature that can not only buff other creatures, but also buffs itself and has trample, meaning this thing can't be chump blocked. I think that matters for not only commander, but also standard. If Abzan moves into a go wide token sort of strategy, I could definitely see this. We have Collector's Cage and Selesnya in the format currently doing that, so maybe they go into black. I think ideally, to get the most out of this card, you're going to want to be sacrificing non-creatures, because obviously every creature you sacrifice is a creature you can't buff. I do think Felithar probably pairs best with creatures that create non-land permanents when they enter the battlefield. So I'm thinking of Thraben and Novice Inspector. I do think this card shouldn't be underrated. I think the fact that it can do this effect when it enters the battlefield and also attacks means that it can actually provide pretty persistent value if it's not answered, which is a pretty important trait cards needs to have nowadays. Definitely not a card to be underestimated, I think. Up next, we have the Temur clan leader in Eshki Dragonclaw. This is a 4-mana Temur flavored card that requires you to cast a creature and non-creature spell every turn. The benefit for that is Eshki gets +2/+2 and draws you a card, which actually I don't think is something you can really scoff at. The drawback on this is that you effectively need to do this in your first main phase, meaning you effectively will telegraph your strategy to your opponent, giving them the chance to respond to it. Having said that, the Ward 1 is pretty relevant. Ward is increasingly becoming a pretty important keyword to have on cards, given how important removal is. And I do think Ward 1, while seemingly insignificant, will add a little bit more sting, particularly against players who are looking to keep just 2 mana open to try and remove this, right? Because then that way they won't actually have the mana to remove it and you'll get your value. The value you're going to get most of this will probably probably be to play this on turn 5, where you'll play this as your creature for the turn, because it will include itself, and then you follow it up with a 1-mana spell. I'm thinking of something in standard like Storm Chaser's Talent, which is a very popular card in green, blue, red, but there's plenty of other cards. You might play a 1-mana removal instead. I think the fact that it has Vigilance and Trample too is great. It lets you apply pressure while also being a big, beefy defender. It might be a bit narrow in standard, and might just be too hard to bring together, but I reckon this will be an awesome card in Commander, a really fun build-around card in Commander. I think there's a lot of exciting ways you could use it, and I'm looking forward to see what people brew with it. Definitely one of the cooler cards we've seen so far. Lastly, from our leaked cards today, we also got Kotus the Fangbearer. This is the Sultai clan leader, another 4-mana one. This is a 2/1 with Indestructible, and unfortunately, we don't actually know what its full text is. In the leak from today, part of its image was covered up. Having said that though, I have a pretty good idea what it's going to be. Villainous Wealth was an iconic Sultai card from Khans of Tarkir that effectively, for an X cost, let you play your opponent's cards. From what we can see, Kotus's text is very reminiscent of this effect. So what I expect is that this is going to be a card that deals damage to a player and effectively casts Villainous Wealth, where X is the number of damage that player took. An interesting card. I think this is definitely a commander card rather than a standard card. Indestructible is a little bit of a trap. You might see that and think that it gives it a lot of staying power. Unfortunately, there is a lot of ways to remove an indestructible creature, especially one with 2 or 1 health in standard. I'm thinking of Torch the Tower, for example, or Elspeth's Smite. These are 1-mana removal spells that always pop up to check creatures like Kotus, and I think that that will ultimately hold it back, unfortunately. The idea of playing a 4-mana creature just for it to be removed effortlessly with a 1-mana spell, I do think that will be a bit of a feels bad. In Commander, however, I think this will be an awesome build-around card. They're really going all out with these wedge kind of clan leaders to be really interesting build-around cards, and I think Kotus is another in that rule, honestly. Really cool card. Also revealed today were the full art lands. Each of these are going to be based on the eye of a particular colored dragon. The artwork reminds me a lot of the book covers for Aragon and Dragonology. I'm actually a really big fan of these. I'm probably going to be looking to pick up a few of these in foil, though I doubt it. It would be really cool if there was some sort of textured foil, particularly for the more scaly designs. I think that would be really cool. Having said that though, I wouldn't go in with too high expectations given the fact that just printing these in foil, Wizards are probably going to print money. Circling back to our 5th and final clan leader, we had Narset Jeskai Waymaster revealed to us earlier. I've seen a lot of people sort of sleep on this card as being a pretty underwhelming card. There are a few things going for it that I think people shouldn't discount. First, it has that 4 health for 3 mana that I think Wizards are pretty acutely aware of what they're doing now, because there is a lot of cards we've seen in this set so far that have that. For reasons, 3 health is a particular weakness for 3-drops to have. There's a lot of common removal that deals with them at that. Nowhere to Run, Torch the Tower, Elspeth's Smite, as I said earlier. 4 health really comfortably puts it out of reach outside of the most premium removal spells. But outside of that though, I think Narset needs to be viewed as more of a role player card. This isn't a card that you necessarily play and win the game off, but it's a card that's going to generate you continual value. It triggers off itself as well, interestingly. So in that way, it has a Fear of Missing Out style effect, where Fear of Missing Out is often played as the last card in hand to draw a card, albeit Narset doesn't draw you that card immediately. I still think that can't be discounted. I think it will probably pop up in a new kind of deck, to be honest. We saw Rally the Monastery as a card that rewards you for playing multiple spells in a turn, and I suspect Narset will support an archetype built around that. It also has discard synergy. We did get a lot of discard support in Aether Drift, which I think this card complements really good. I'm thinking of Marauding Marco and Monument to Endurance. There's that blue Stingray that cares about discard too. I think all of these are really interesting cards with Narset, so don't sleep on this card. Outside of that, we also got the Jeskai Mythic Dragon. Now, there's going to be a Mythic Dragon for each of the 5 tricolors. This is the Jeskai one in Shaiko, Paragon of the Way, and I'm just going to say it now. This might be the strongest card of the set, so far at least. Absolutely, hands down, amazing everywhere. Well, amazing in Commander, definitely amazing in Standard too. Why? This card is incredibly flexible. The card that you can get with it will undoubtedly be very powerful because you've put it in your deck. There is a ton of good cards that cost 3 mana or less. I'm just thinking of Abhorrent Oculus, for example. Albeit you'll have to pay the additional cost of Oculus, I still think that basically being able to put it into a deck where you're going to be milling cards to hit with Shaiko anyway is probably going to be a pretty low cost to pay. I can bring back other engine pieces like Monument to Endurance, like I mentioned earlier. Caretaker's Talent might even come back. It can bring back card draw engines, just card draw spells in general, a second creature to block with, or it could just even bring in a removal spell. I think there are just so many applications for this card, and I think we're going to see it everywhere. Amazing in Commander. commander. Definitely put it in any deck that can run red, blue, and white. I do think you'll find value in it, honestly. If you pull this card, you'll be very happy. Next up, we have another new card revealed today. This is United Battlefront. It calls back to Chord of Calling, a 4-mana green spell that went through your deck and pulled out a card. This one doesn't pull creatures out, despite effectively referencing creatures very heavily. It pulls out artifacts, enchantments, and any non-land, non-creature permanent that costs 3 mana or less. The question you have here, though, is what are you going to target with it? If there's a really good target, a card like this will undoubtedly be very powerful. One of the things holding it back is the fact it's a sorcery and not an instant. I do think Chord of Calling had that as its advantage, where effectively you could play this on your opponent's turn when they attacked you, summon a blocker, and kill their creature. Not being able to do that is a bit of a problem, I think, but I do see this deck existing in specifically Monument to Endurance lists, Caretaker's Talent lists, and probably most likely Simulacrum Synthesizer and Repurposing Bay. I think a card like this gives that deck consistency, which I think is the thing holding it back. That deck is incredibly reliant on hitting Simulacrum Synthesizer and being able to effectively get a card that will go 7 cards deep into their deck to find what they need. And if they don't find the Synthesizer, they can find the Bay, which can then get them the Synthesizer. I think this might be the missing piece. I really think United Battlefield will have a place. Can also pull in another new card revealed, which was Stormplane Detainment. This is a 3-mana enchantment that acts as a unconditional exile a non-land permanent, which those effects are normally really great. 3 mana is a lot to pay for it, but if you staple that to a card that can effectively search for it when you need it in a pinch, I think that has potential. There's also that artifact with Start Your Engines and Loot Trapped in Jail as well from Aether Drift. That card could also see play with it. Definitely one to watch. Very hard to whiff on if you build your deck correctly. That was one of the big things with Chord of Calling too. You had to build the deck a certain way. You can probably fit a deck with more non-creature, non-lands than you could with Chord of Calling's creature requirement, if you are so inclined. Next up, we have a bit of a jaw-dropping card. This is Mox Jasper, a brand new Moxen. Obviously an instant staple in any dragon deck, but outside of that, people are scratching their head on where they're going to put this thing. I think the fact it's a Moxen pretty much inherently means we cannot underestimate this card. Moxen have historically broken formats. Any 0 mana spell immediately has synergy with things, regardless of what is printed on it. So for example, Prowess, the new Dragon Claw I showed earlier, would see this as a non-creature spell. The new Narsat, all of these things that will trigger because you casted a spell, even if it was free, even if it doesn't do any effect. And I think Mox Jasper will have synergy because of that. I also see a world where you may play it in decks that care about playing things from exile, just to get another play from exile trigger. So the Pia Nalaar from March of Machines and Quintorius Canned, both of these cards love playing cards from exile. You probably will feel bad if you discover this with Quintorius, but there's probably other ways to game the system just so you can get extra 2 damage in. What I do think though will happen is it will likely spawn some sort of deck that is a hybrid of cards trying to get these kind of benefits, and then cards that play dragons as well, so you can tap it for mana. A card that may go in that deck is Stormscale Scion. This card has Storm written on it, almost indicating it was made to be played with this Mox Jasper. 100% easiest way to trigger Storm, but I do think not having haste holds this creature back. We already have plenty of cards, not just in standard but everywhere, that kind of auto win when they hit the board. This is probably just another in a long line of that. A lot of these cards, like say Herd Migration, which summons a bunch of 3/3s, which often just kills everyone, at least everyone in a standard game. Those cards are modal, meaning that you can also throw it away, gain 3 life, and find a land if you need to. And I think Stormscale Scion just being a 6-mana card that will sit in your hand, and in non-commander formats, you might have 4 of these, that will probably hold you back. And I do think that will be an important limitation on this card. I think there will be a way to break it, undoubtedly. If you can have a way to innately have haste on the board, this thing will absolutely be an Avenger level threat. It will ruin days, but it will require a little bit of ingenuity to get there. One way that you can get there is a new Sarkhan. This is a card that demonstrates the new Behold mechanic, which is effectively show a thing in your hand, get a benefit. In this case, Sarkhan wants you to behold a dragon. He'll give you a treasure for it, which is a great payoff, actually. Treasure tokens are universally helpful. There's not really anywhere that they're not relevant and not helpful. Interestingly, this is not a tapped treasure token, which is something we've been seeing printed on a lot of cards recently. Sarkhan is also a 2/2 that can often become a continually bigger threat. Him being legendary probably will hold him back a little bit. This is the kind of card that if it wasn't legendary and you were playing dragons, you'd probably want to jam just as many copies of it into your deck as possible. There will be times where you have multiple Sarkhan in your hand and you can't play both of them because one's on the battlefield already. But I don't think that will happen too much. It might be a card you're on 3 of as a result of that. I think if we see more cards like Sarkhan, where they're cards that will let you ramp into the high mana cost dragons, I think dragons could be a very real threat. We will see though. Lastly, for the good cards worth mentioning, we got a new Siege Rhino. For all the Magic veterans out there, this is a 3 mana version of Siege Rhino, still in Abzan colors, does a little less damage, but he crucially has 4 health as a 3 mana card. I think this is a better card than Siege Rhino. Would Siege Rhino see play in today's time? Probably not. Will Skirmish Rhino see play? We'll have to see, but I do think it's absolutely worth noting that this card is a real threat. I think this will appear in probably a mid-range kind of deck. Obviously, if Abzan is good, this card is probably good too, and will round out the 3-drop slot for that deck. I don't think there's much more to say about Siege Rhino Light. We'll have to have a look when it comes out. Quick update, folks. Jerry from the future here. Once again, mid-editing, it appears another card has been leaked. Without further ado, this is Dracogenesis. For those who are keeping up with Mark Rosewater's hints, this is the card that he hinted at that copies a popular zombie enchantment. Rooftop Storm is a 6 mana zombie enchantment that lets you cast zombies for free. We now have a dragon version for 8 mana, which is very exciting for the dragon players out there. 2 extra mana, I will say, is a lot though. You're not going to be running this outside of a dragon heavy deck, and you're probably going to be running it in a dragon deck with a commander that's a very high cost. So I'm thinking of Tiamat or the Dragon. Outside of commander, I would not be expecting to play this card much. It's probably next to Stone Cold unplayable. Regardless though, I suspect this will be in high demand and one of the most expensive cards of the set. Now, lastly, I wanted to talk about a few stinkers. These are cards that absolutely suck. I would not be playing them. If I pull them in packs, I'll probably cry a little bit. I am prepared to stand up and say that these cards are bad, and you can judge me if you disagree. First card is Inevitable Defeat. What looks like a reasonable card in the sense that it can unconditionally remove anything. It can't be countered. It also staples on Lightning Helix too. That's a lot of useful effects, and normally when we staple things together, it turns out to be a pretty good card. My problem with this card is it's too slow in most games. 4 mana is a lot to remove a permanent in some matchups. If you're in a control game, that 3 damage will probably matter a lot. Being able to remove the engine piece that they try and set up, or anything that they try and like stick to the board in the late game. Yeah, cards like Inevitable Defeat are great. But outside of that, I don't think paying 4 mana and getting also a Lightning Helix stapled onto your removal against an aggro deck is going to be enough to cut it. I think you're going to get absolutely mugged by decks that do that. It might be a sideboard card in Mardu decks that want to verse control. If control is good, that's another question, because if control is everywhere, maybe Inevitable Defeat, it pops up. But if it isn't, I think it's too slow. I don't think it will really win many games for you. Baron Step Siege, another card in the too expensive for what you pay for line. Decks that run this will probably be geared to one or the other options. You got a sacrifice theme and a 1/1 counter theme. I suspect all these sieges will probably do this, but this particular one, if you're running one of those particular decks that cares about one of the options, I think 4 mana is too much to pay for it. That's the short end of it, effectively. By the time you play this, you either need to have a board, which means you're already winning, or you effectively have probably already lost to an aggro deck, and making them sacrifice their permanents probably isn't going to be enough. Then lastly, Smile at Death. This is a mythic card honoring a iconic character, but unfortunately is pretty bad. This is what I would call a do-nothing card. You will die the turn you play this to an aggro deck, and everyone else will remove it the turn you play it, unfortunately. There will obviously be times, again, where this isn't answered, and you'll probably win those games, but it's about the consistency of that. Games where you have that are definitely not going to be as common as games where you lose because you've played this. If you're looking for a card that has this effect, and you happen to be in black, Virtue of Persistence, I think, is absolutely serviceable. The mana cost difference becomes negligible given the fact that the matchups it's best played in are going to be matchups where you're getting to 7 mana, and Virtue of Persistence in aggro matchups still gives you a removal spell. I just think Smile at Death doesn't really stand up because of that. That's all the cards from day 0. Tomorrow we're going to be covering the first batch of drops, but I wanted to get ahead of the game a bit, considering I'm new to all this as well. If you like what I do, please subscribe. Let me know, or rather, check out some of my other videos where I talk about some commander-related topics as well as general magic stuff. Thinking about getting a little philosophical on this channel, but keep an eye out and let me know what you'd like to see next. Cheers!